Hey, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. I'm not saying good morning now because it's noon my time here. We've got a couple of minutes to go before we start our meeting. And Wendy, I know you're ready to let me know if you can hear me or not and be my tech troubleshooting sidekick. Pop on into the box if you want to. Otherwise, it's great to see some people trickling in for what will hopefully be a really positive and uplifting topic on this day that I know for some of us might not feel 100% easy and positive. So hopefully we're going to have, there we go. I see something happening. It won't. Oh, well, I'm glad you can hear me. I don't know why you can't request because I've never ever figured out how to tell people to request to share at all. So my best tip there might be something around refreshing feeds and all of that kind of good stuff. Okay, you figured it out. Hey, you got it. You made it. Yeah. No, I don't record the people who share. Like I stop recording when I'm done giving information. And so when I open it up for questions or comments, that kind of thing, I stop the video recording then, or the audio. And stay tuned. You're going to find out what resilience is. I can guarantee you have some to draw on, and it's a good thing. You do, yeah. No, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share about it. So, yeah, cool. Good, good. Bye. Okay, so that was a good sign that we're heading toward being live and it's working. Um, I thought I might talk about food addiction and sugar addiction this week. I was thinking about Halloween. Um, and then in the last instance, it just didn't feel like the most relevant and pressing thing for me to address, given what I had been hearing from people. So I switched gears. We're going to talk about resilience today. And I just have a little note for those of you who have been Googling the CERT food diet after hearing Adele mention it on some recent thing. Maybe it was SNL, maybe it was some awards show. I can't remember. But I know there's been a lot of interest in the CERT food diet. And what I'm here to tell you guys is, yes, of course it works. It is a highly plant-based diet, and it's seriously calorie reduced, starting with just 1,000 calories a day and then going up to 1,500 and then toggling right around in that area. But it's a low-calorie diet comprised primarily of healthy plant foods. So, of course, it works. Whether that makes it the, quote, right diet for you or whether there's anything particularly magic about it, whole nother question, whole nother story there. But just thought I'd get that quick answer in for anyone who might have wondered. So, welcome. We're going to start right on time today because we have such a great topic to cover and I want to invite lots of voices in. The rates of depression and anxiety and poor mental health throughout the country, indeed throughout the world, they're rising faster than the researchers and polling organizations can keep track of. People are just reporting so much more depression and stress and anxiety. And then the related behaviors that can come with that. Certainly for us here, we know that addiction is one of those that we might use to try to cope with those kinds of difficulties. So we see those rates rising fast right now, and we know that specifically with the election just right in front of us, an average of 72% of Americans are reporting that the election itself is a source of significant stress for them. So with the election and the pandemic and the climate crisis and the racial tension, there's just so many things going on at this big level that feel like really alive and really personal and really in our face right now. And of course, we all have our own lives and our own stresses and strains that we would just naturally be experiencing anyway. And this can really press us. It leaves us feeling pressed to the edge. So we need to be looking at our resilience. Where are our protective factors that are going to help us move through any of the challenges in front of us without derailing? And in fact, for people who have that history of addiction to substances and behaviors, we want to be really sure we've got ourselves set up to not go into relapse, not be triggered into new addictions because of the stress and strain for us. So there's a real practical, hands-on reason for us to be paying attention here. Stressful situations can lead us to give up. They are related to a higher risk of relapse. And potentially, even if it doesn't become that extreme, it's just this low level of not feeling good, not living our recovery at full capacity, but just sort of getting along okay in the face of this huge burden of anxiety we may feel. So we want to dig into that and be able to, even in the times that we're in now, find that route forward to use our recovery as a platform to truly thrive, not just survive. And we want to think about this not from the perspective of what kind of money can I throw at a self-care routine here. We're looking for a real sense of wellness, taking excellent care of ourselves, and that also means taking excellent care of each other right now. It's really not about buying a new face mask. That might be nice, but it is not what resilience actually is and is about. We can do it for free. We can do it right now. And those of us who are on this call have a lot of experience with resilience already. We're going to draw from that tonight. I'm Lulu Cook. I'm a counselor, I'm an author, I'm a dietitian, and I've been in the rooms myself for almost 21 years now. Lots of different rooms because I need lots of different kinds of help. And what we talk about in this meeting are actionable strategies to help us really feel better and get the best out of our recovery, really improve our physical and our mental health. It's evidence-based information, so I always go right to what the most recent scientific studies say, as well as what my clients are telling me about what they're struggling with and what's working for them. So we bring those together. It's not specific medical or mental health advice, but I do really invite you to email me, lulu@gutfeelingcoaching, if you have more specific or personal questions. The technical side of it is that I'll keep the chat box closed during the part where I'm talking, as I just mentioned a little bit ago. I'll keep that chat box closed so that we can record this session. I'll post it later on my Facebook, Gut Feeling Nutrition Therapy. So I'll post that video later and want to keep it anonymous for everyone. So we'll open up the questions in the latter half, and meanwhile, welcome to try chatting me. I do try picking them up, but sometimes I just don't, and sometimes I X you out and have no idea where the chat went to, but you can try to get some questions in as we go along. So I did want to note, I know some of you are really looking forward to that exploration of food addiction, so I promise that'll be our topic for next week. We'll tackle food addiction then. So I want to start with a quote about our topic of the day. So you might even just close your eyes and let these words land. Wind extinguishes a candle and energizes fire. Likewise with randomness, uncertainty, chaos, you want to use them, not hide from them. You want to be the fire and wish for the wind, not just survive uncertainty. So that's our theme tonight. How could we be the fire and wish for the wind to really even be able to thrive right in the moment of history that we are sitting in? That quote was from Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who wrote the book Anti-Fragile, and we'll talk about some of his ideas a little bit more. But first, we're going to start with just defining what is resilience. How does it relate to substance and other addictions, food addiction, internet addiction? There's a ton of research around resilience factors for internet addiction and social media addiction, trauma. There's a ton of research in this field about trauma as well. And that's really looking at post-traumatic growth. Many of us know about PTSD, post-traumatic distress syndrome, but there's this whole other side of that coin, post-traumatic growth, growing and becoming even stronger from the trials that we go through. So we're going to investigate what are the strengths we bring to this as people in recovery, and what can we do to increase our resilience. So there's two definitions of resilience that we'll be playing with a little bit. They are related and yet different. There's in the research, there's the resilience to risk of substance abuse and other addictions, and resilience to relapse risk. So this is a really specific use of the term to say, what are the factors that protect us from potential addiction, or if we're in recovery, protect us from potential relapse. And we know that acute and chronic stress both increase the risk of addiction and increase the risk of relapse. So what we want to do as people in recovery is expand our window of tolerance. We want to have adaptations in our brain and our body and our social connections, so that when we are triggered by the stress of the world and the stress of our relationships, we don't get dysregulated. We don't feel that physical tension, and we're able to maintain that sense of cool, calm, and collected, kind of no matter what else is going on. And that would be our resilience to those factors of relapse and factors of addiction. And the other way we could think about relapse, or the other way to think about resilience, is simply that there's an opportunity to develop adaptability in the face of those stresses. We want to be able to bounce back from adversities and have positive outcomes mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, in the face of any kind of adversity. And some of us are more vulnerable to struggling with that than others. In recovery, we're always looking to build that structure that will promote resilience, allowing us to cope with psychological, emotional, physical pain, political pain, whatever it may be. We want to be able to cope with those factors that can lead to relapse with more success. And when we look at some of the different factors that are protective, there was a Swedish study of over 1 million twins, and they found a few different factors. We're going to dive into them more as we go along, but social connections, psychological energy, home environment, emotional control, these were all important, but it's social connections that were the number one strongest effect of creating this sense of resilience. And we're going to talk about this quite a lot today, because resilience is not an inside job. It is not something that we do in isolation. It is a community process and a community practice. As human animals, we need relationship, we need connection, we need community in order to cope and face the uncertainty of our times. So this is a major resource that is available to us because we are in recovery. That makes being in recovery just this huge asset to help us overcome the stress and pain of it all. The word resilience comes from Latin. I'm on a big Latin kick these days, so I'm butchering Latin in my free time as a hobby. so don't ask me to pronounce it properly. But the Latin word is resilientia, which means the action of rebounding. It's not just surviving and taking the next step forward. Being resilient means we come back stronger. To quote Nassim Nicholas Taleb from Anti-Fragile again, he takes this position that resilience is only the first part of it. We want to go all the way to this place of anti-fragility, which is beyond resilience. The resilient resists shock and stays the same. The anti-fragile gets better. Anti-fragile has a property of allowing us to deal with the unknown and to do things without understanding them, to do them well. So if that doesn't sound like recovery, I don't know what is. Many of us can look back at our early experience before we even wandered into whatever our addictions are, and we know, yeah, it wasn't actually that hot at the time anyway. And then going through recovery, going through the pain of that, led us to a place in our life that's actually better than we started. So that is anti-fragility, or we'll just use resilience for this meeting today. I want to flag that resilience is a cultural concept. Vulnerability and resilience are understood differently in different cultures. There's a really neat Mexican, derives from Mexican philosophy, a way of looking at this that's called zozobra. And due to the hundreds and hundreds of years of profound social and political upheaval that the country of Mexico and all of those different regions have faced, they have developed some skills at dealing with the disorientation and anxiety that can arise when it feels like our very social fabric, the foundation of our world, the rules as we understand them, are disintegrating. That there's the meaning that we took for granted about how things were and how we all got along and what we all thought is important, that can seem like it's fraying, and it creates this unique sense of unease and discomfort called zozobra. We can't make sense of what's happening. One minute everything seems normal, and then the next minute everything's up for question and feels like it's falling apart. Authors Gallegos and Sanchez put it like this: is it a lovely autumn day? Or is it an alarming moment of converging historical catastrophes? Right? We can look through those different lenses from moment to moment. We feel like, oh, everything's great. I just got a picture of a stripy kitten stretching. That was beautiful. And then the next moment, it's like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. It's all over now. So that's one cultural lens we can look at this anxiety of uncertainty through. Buddhism and Buddhist practice offers another cultural lens we can look through, because the Buddha taught extensively about the nature of the world. The nature of reality is uncertainty and impermanence. All that is dear and beloved of me will change and vanish, and I will change. It's this fundamental uncertainty that sometimes seems like it's really bright in front of us, really obvious. And this might be one of those moments for many of us. We might be noticing some things that don't look like resilience in our lives, in our experience. Lots of drinking, risky sex, shopping addiction getting out of control. All of these kinds of things can seem like they're really flaring up for some of us right now. And maybe we could try to see them as adaptive in a way. We'll talk about that a little bit more, how we could be kind and gentle to ourselves even with some of those behaviors getting out of control. Let's pick our battles right now. Some of the risk factors for being more vulnerable in these kinds of stressful times would be what our early experiences were like, whether we were raised in family settings in which we had a real sense of success and a sense of confidence in our needs being met, or whether we were raised in situations that featured a lot of adverse circumstances, a lot of difficulty, and not feeling like we were successful with things and had control over the outcome. Oftentimes in our society, those kinds of experiences are also related with race. because of how society is constructed and the kinds of opportunities available to different families, we start to see these connections where different racial groups might have higher risk of substance use disorders because of just this experience that's gone along throughout people's lives and even multi-generational, not helping them have that sense of success and security in the world. No, there's also temperament characteristics that put us more at risk. So sort of our personality, just the kind of person you are, could be a characteristic that puts you more at risk. And in fact, people who score higher on neuroticism and conscientiousness scales, if you take these sort of psychological tests, we can see that more neuroticism and being more conscientious about things can actually help protect us in the face of these kinds of risks, maybe because we do so much planning to get ahead of it. We can see resilience in families that are impacted by addiction and alcoholism. That can be a factor that shows up with some not such healthy ways of trying to cope with the stress and uncertainty of addiction in the family. And this is another place where we see that the systems level, what is our family like? What is our position in society like? That comes on down and touches us individually. It's how do I now think about my own circumstances? What options do I see available to me? And possibly those options are going to look like, I'm just going to go have a drink. Resilience studies have been cropping up around the pandemic particularly, and we find that young people who have lost their job and feel that they're in economic distress, women, people of color, people, queer people, these are all groups that face increased risk to their sense of resilience. And again, building more community is one of the key factors we're going to see helps support that, limiting social media, making sure people have access to mental health support. And I think there's no way to get around the fact that people who have those histories of addiction are going to be at a higher risk here. One study looked at resilience and food addiction specifically during COVID-19 and found that a quarter of people who already had some kind of disordered eating, a full quarter of them, 1/4 of them, experienced an increase in food addiction behaviors over the course of the pandemic playing out. That's increased binging, purging, food hoarding, restriction. So these are what we call non-adaptive or maladaptive responses to the stresses that we find ourselves in, and turning to these coping mechanisms that seem like they might be helping in the instance when we're in so much pain and distress, but actually over the long term, they're really making it much harder for us. And one of the factors this study pointed to is this thing called low self-directedness, putting us at higher risk. And this pertains not just to food addiction, but to any of the arenas of recovery as well. What is this low self-directedness that puts us at risk? Well, it means we all have a different place in our minds of how powerful we think we are over influencing our circumstances. We could feel completely powerless over our circumstances. We're putting all of that control into some external source. We're at the whim of fate. If that's our stance and we just really feel that we're a victim of circumstance and blame others, we're going to be at higher risk of clinical depression and less ability to make positive change in our lives, especially when things are hard. On the other side of that continuum, you have people who think, I am solely responsible for my choices. All of my rewards are just due to how great I am. 100% self-responsibility for my successes and failures. It's this godlike perception, exaggerated sense of self-importance, and it can come out as this obsessive effort to control or to be perceived as controlling everything that's happening. So we have these two extremes of how we think about our sense of control and self-direction, and the healthy middle is I'm sure some of you already guessed, the healthy middle is where we want to be, where we can accept the things we cannot change. We can change the things we can, and we can cultivate the wisdom to know the difference. Some things truly are beyond our ability to influence and control, and we have to have skills to adapt to them. Others are within our ability to control, and we need to take responsibility for them. So as we move toward more resilience now, we're moving toward, that's kind of the picture of what puts us at risk. So what can we do to cultivate more resilience? We start to see that the very things that we might yearn for, safety, security, love, belonging, these can actually feel like threats to some of us. How many of you know someone who, we won't pretend it's ourselves, but maybe we know someone who has come into the rooms, they've kicked their addiction, they're clean and sober now, and they're going along okay, and then it all falls apart. Maybe there's a big relapse, and maybe what they say to you is, things were going too good for me. I couldn't trust it. I couldn't relax. It was kind of creepy. I didn't know how to be comfortable and be at ease when things were going really well. Those of us who have some of the harrowing histories that we have can have these highly developed danger maps in our mind. We're constantly scanning for threats. And in the current social climate that we're in, there's a lot of threats to always be scanning for. It can feel untrustworthy to give ourselves that space to feel calm and downregulate. It can feel like, no, I can't do that. I need to stay alert. The penny's about to drop. I need more information. So this limited experience of safety that we're just taking our little baby steps in recovery, trying to build up that foundation, my goodness, this is not an easy time for us. And what happens when we're walking along, constantly scanning like that, constantly feeling stressful, watching the news updates about pandemic numbers and election polling results, we get this wear and tear on the body, actually. There is a cost of this chronic exposure to the hormonal and neuronal, the mental brain fluctuations that happen as a result to chronic repeat exposure to these high levels of stress. We start to see our bodies acting out with, maybe it's sweating, it could be the racing repetitive thoughts, the future worries, tight stomach. Maybe we become ravenously hungry and just want to eat and eat and eat until we can't feel anything else, like all those worries. Or maybe we lose our appetite. We don't want to eat anything at all. Maybe we're through the roof with energy, or we're flattened and have no energy. These are signals from our body that we're being heavily impacted by the amount of stress coming in. And so when we notice those signals, my goodness, what a great time to start taking some action. We could use those as reminders to stop, notice what's going on for us, name it. This is like first step stuff about stress. If they had, I'm sure there is a 12-step group for Stressors Anonymous, maybe. This would be the first step, naming, wow, I'm really impacted over the amount of anxiety coming my way from the way things are right now. I'm really powerless over some of those big pieces, and this is really hard. We want to bring that spirit of self-compassion into our experience. This is hard. It's hard for us. And we could also, while we're busy noticing what's really going on, one of the things we can do to cultivate more resilience would be to notice when we are successful at meeting challenges. And gosh, that could be easy for those of us in recovery. We've got some success stories, whether it's, I just got my 9-month chip today, whether it's, I worked, I just finished working my steps today, or even just I asked somebody to be my sponsor, whether it's, maybe it's just, there was the one day last week that I didn't drink. I don't care what it is, people. Find some of those successes and notice them. Don't let them escape your notice that you did something stretched beyond your comfort zone to move in a more in a more resilient direction. And I mentioned the part about, maybe finding a sponsor. It could be cultivating that home group if that's the kind of program you're in. It could be connecting with people here. It could be getting a counselor, somebody to really work with you one-on-one on this, or finding other allies. But developing resilience requires relationships. The way we make meaning and understand the world, we don't generate that out of our own imagination in isolation. We generate meaning and generate our sense of connection reliant upon community, connection, caring others. This is where there's quite a bit of research about internet and social media addiction and the importance of family and community factors in helping protect people from really losing themselves in those types of addictions. So we rely on others to help us understand and shape how we see the world. What does that mean at a time when it seems like there's no agreement about it? When our understanding as a community seems like it's disintegrating, back to that Mexican philosophical concept of zozobra. Well, one of the things it means is that we can focus on the fundamental values, not the surface level details. We can notice that as humans, we all share so much in common, including this anxiety and stress that so many of us are feeling right now. We share that in common, but we also share, along with the sense of being really scared and uncertain about the climate, about racial reconciliation, about access to healthcare for everyone, about politics, about who we can trust and who's reliable. We share all of those concerns. And we also share all of these values that are deeply meaningful to every single person in this room and in our communities. We all want freedom from the places we are stuck and addicted. We all want every person to matter and have a voice and be safe. We all want the earth to survive and thrive. We all want to be healthy. We all want to be happy and to not suffer. We share those fundamental truths in common. And we have this choice about where we orient our focus right now. And it's easy to orient toward what feels scary. That's just our brain doing its job, trying to help us keep scanning for threats. But sometimes it's not useful. And I would argue this is probably one of them. We need that sense of togetherness more so than ever. So we have that compassion for each other, and we're trying our best to have some compassion for ourselves, for how we're showing up at this time. We can use mindfulness as a further tool to support our resilience here. Starting to notice the signs of when we are more regulated. Do we slow down? Do we feel more relaxed? Is our nervous system more balanced and operating more predictably? These are signs of vitality and life and health and balance. We want to notice them. We can do that by noticing our body in really simple ways, our breath. We can use our minds. We can think reflectively and notice, when did I feel relaxed and at ease? What was the situation? What were the factors that were at play then? Maybe it's going to a particular recovery group. Maybe it's seeing a particular friend. Paying attention to those indicators that we feel at a body level, a cellular level, we feel safe and connected and at ease. Because when we notice what those are, we can amplify them. Mindfulness does not have to mean a big scary thing of sitting on a cushion in silence for 45 minutes. It can do, that's a beautiful way to practice mindfulness if that works for you. But it could just be taking a big breath into your belly, noticing how your belly feels, which you can do right now. It can be doing 5-finger breathing. This is a practice that gets taught to kids. I'll teach it to you right now, so you can do it along with me. Nobody can see you if you would like to join me. So you just use tracing your fingers as a way to regulate. Inhaling as you go up Exhaling down. In, out. In, out. In, out. In, out. Ah, that's it. That soothes the nervous system and calms you down. You can do it as many times as you want. And if anybody joined me for that little practice, you did just officially do some meditation today, some mindfulness practice. And we all did that together. Some of us did that together. I won't know who, but some of us did that together, which is also so important for that neurological sense of safety. It's the bonding and attachment. It's that trust in others that we begin to establish. And if we didn't experience that as kids, I mean, really some of this, the cognitive experience, the felt sense, and the brain memory of that kind of safety, that gets laid down in our first couple years of life. Some of us didn't have conditions that supported that. That does not mean that it's too late, just give up, you're just ruined. It means that now that you have that awareness, you can begin cultivating those safe connections now that will help you co-regulate each other. Those senses, those experiences of safety and connection reduce our inflammation levels, they increase our immunity, they improve our gut health. So knowing when we are safe and creating the relationships that will help us get there, that is a huge protective factor available to us because we're in recovery, specifically because of that. And you know, it can be difficult to relate socially with people when we are under great stress or when we're feeling our traumas triggered. This is a time it might be useful to seek out a relationship with a caring counselor or mentor, allies who can be sort of surrogate, soothing caregivers. None of us calling in today, we're not kids anymore, so we don't get to go back there and redo it, but we can choose people who create that sense of safety and care. We can focus on behaviors that increase our sense of self-direction, like we talked about a little bit earlier, our sense of perceived control. Health behaviors are often a great place to do this because even if the psychological and emotional part feels too overwhelming, even if the social aspect feels so hard, we're just not feeling like we can chime up a conversation with somebody at the end of a meeting. Perhaps a place for some of us to get in then would be with some simple health behaviors that help us feel like, gosh darn it, I did it. I do have some control over how I'm feeling. Just 3 minutes of movement helps release dopamine in the brain. Dopamine is one of those chemicals that can help reset our mood. It tells us, yes, that was a good thing. That was a reward. Let's do it again. Just 3 minutes of movement, like doing some jumping jacks or marching in place with your knees, can help give us that benefit. And we can be like, yeah, nailed that. I did it. Increasing that sense of efficacy and self-control. For some of us, it might be as simple as cracking open a little essential oil of lavender and smelling that beautiful aroma of lavender, which has been proven to be calming. It lowers our cortisol level. It lowers our stress hormone level. The fragrance of lavender does. Simple health behaviors that can help increase our resilience. And when we choose them, let's notice them and give ourselves credit for it. This takes time. Becoming better at adapting to the stresses and strains that are coming at us, getting better at being able to manage our emotions and self-regulate in the midst of all of that coming toward us. It takes time to cultivate that. And some of us arrive into our recovery spaces with that attitude of we want what we want when we want it. Now, yesterday. So it can be hard to be patient with ourselves as we build our capacity for resilience, as we become a little less reactive and a little more likely to go for that bottle of lavender essential oil. But as we make those changes, our energy gets freed up from that sense of threat and survival and scanning for danger and struggling against reality and the truth of what's going on, our energy gets freed up. We can pour that into taking better care of ourselves and taking better care of each other then. And there's also really good evidence to show that we find strength. We find that in sources of faith, hope, cultural, spiritual traditions. These, for many people, these kinds of cultural and faith backgrounds are going to be deeply, deeply soothing and nourishing. They help give meaning to our life, and they could even be a place we could practice stretching our edges in healthy ways if we wanted to take on some kind of a creative pursuit, something that would feel personally nourishing and meaningful in the midst of all the things we can't control. Maybe just taking that drawing class would feel like we're taking control in a way that's creative and meaningful for us. So there's just so many options here, different ways to do it. Authors Kane and Terrell said that we recover and we become more resilient when we challenge the system and return to stability. We want to shift the ways that we're stuck in our negative thinking about what's going on right now. Change it up with literally anything else. Go do the dishes, go for a walk, just stand up and leave the room. When we find ourselves stuck in that mental gear of worry, hint, turn off the constant social media updates about what's going on politically right now. Turn them off. Don't bring your phone with you. Leave the room. Just cutting that connection is going to help create that space and that ease. Focus on your feet while you move. Notice the sense of the ground underneath you supporting you. That's just another easy way to bring mindfulness into it. Take a nature break. Gosh, go for a walk outside if that's available to you. The roots of resilience are to be found in the sense of being understood by and existing in the mind and heart of a loving, attuned, and self-possessed other. That's Diana Fascia. So the very roots of resilience are in that sense of being understood and connecting with a caring other. Take care of each other. Find some communities that you care about and show up in them. Tell your stories of strength to each other. Remind yourself and the people around you about what you have going for you, what you share in common right now that's going to help create resiliency at this time. And please, please, please be kind to yourselves. This is just not an easy time. It's not an easy night or next few days, probably, we can anticipate. Not easy. So really good time to be gentle and kind with ourselves and give ourselves credit for the ways that we are showing up. I would love to hear about it. I'm certainly going to leave a lot of time for hearing the experiences and wisdom of the people in this room. I want to hear your story of strength and resilience. For those of you who do want to connect with me one-on-one, find out how I work with clients, or if you had a specific question that you don't feel comfortable to bring up at the group level, please just pop me a note. You can do that here on this platform. You can email me, lulu@gutfeelingcoaching.com. You can find me on my website or Facebook, Gut Feeling Nutrition Therapy. I love referrals from people in the rooms. These are honestly my very, very favorite people to work for, because there's already so much going right for someone who is engaging with recovery in some way. So the parts that aren't working yet, that's all fixable, that's all workable. So I would love to hear from some of you, but I'm going to stop talking now. I really appreciate your attention and time, and we're going to turn it over to you to share your story of resilience. Thank you.